Day 10 of Loshgust is now here, and if we look back at last year, I did some solid concepts in giving you my favorites for every haunted house, scare zone, and everything in between. And if we go back 7 days, I gave you guys a video of 5 haunted houses that I would bring back to Halloween Horror Nights Orlando. And in today's video, I'm going to do the very same thing, however this time with scare zones. And unlike the haunted house video, in this scare zone video, I will give you the 5 scare zones that I would bring back based on the 5 locations that we have for scare zones in general. So the Plaza of the Stars, New York, San Francisco, Central Park, and Hollywood. So expect me to give you some scare zones that have left some core memories with me and in general have just been amazing scare zones. Now with all the important stuff out of the way, let's get into the 5 scare zones that I would love to see come back to Halloween Horror Nights Orlando someday. We will start with the first scare zone you see as soon as you walk into the park, and that zone is Plaza of the Stars. This zone in almost all of my years of attending Halloween Horror Nights has basically been a table of context zone in which you show off every little thing that is in the park. A scare zone of that magnitude can be done very well if handled properly. However, 9 times out of 10, a table of context scare zone does not work well for the event in general, in my opinion. But I have seen some vastly different scare zones from this location, like Masquerade Unstitched or Scary Tale Scream Punk. But the zone I selected here is An Arcade from HHN 2019. This scare zone was truly one of a kind. It was a breakaway from the table of context scare zone that we've seen in the location for recent years, and it was a nice breath of fresh air. The zone itself was an 80s inspired arcade that took over the Avenue of the Stars. At first glance, you may think it's a party. However, you quickly learn that game over means a permanent end for you. A gang of neon slashers are out to play, and this is one game you won't want to lose. Every little thing about this zone was great, whether it was the set pieces or the character design. The whole zone in general stood out and truly became one of, if not the best scare zones we've ever had located in the front section of the park. Now we move from the front section of the park to another area the same way we would on the map. We're going to see New York. New York always features one of the bigger scare zones at the event, and honestly, I feel as if almost every single one of them have been amazing. Now there have been some that weren't, but it made my choice here a little bit difficult nonetheless. But after much careful thought and consideration, I decided to go with Vamp 85 New Year's Eve from HHN 2018. Now this was a sequel to Vamp 55 from HHN 26, and in my opinion, I think that the 85 version of this is so much better than the 55 version. Walking into the scare zone felt like a flashback to the 80s, with almost all of the characters being some kind of historical figure from that decade. For example, we had Michael Jackson, Freddie Mercury, and Prince, just to say the least. You blend those characters in with the music, and truly this scare zone was a perfect use of that area in New York. And you get all those feels mixed in with the original characters they added here. This scare zone was truly iconic and unforgettable. Would love to see this back exactly how it was. Now as we keep going up the map, we go to San Francisco, where we have had some of the most congested and tiny scare zones you have ever seen at Halloween Horror Nights. But don't let the size of this zone fool you. We've had some amazing scares on this location, like Invasion or Rob Zombie's Hellbilly Deluxe. But for this list in particular, I didn't select either of those two. I selected what is one of my favorite scare zones I have ever seen at Halloween Horror Nights, and that was All Night Die-In double feature from HHN 2015. This scare zone in particular is one of the most unique scare zones that Halloween Horror Nights has ever created to this day. The scare zone itself was set in the Cary Drive-In and had 2 distinct different casts that would come out at different times. One of those was a black and white films cast that was mostly based on the Universal monsters, and the other was based on modern day horror films, which would go on to feature Chucky, Freddy, Jason, and a slew of other modern day slashers. And this concept, surprisingly to me, has yet to be repeated. But I believe a perfect example of how this can come back someday would be using the icons of Halloween Horror Nights. You can have the original icons in Jack, Usher, Director, etc. on one cast, and on the opposite you have the newer icons like Oddfellow, Pumpkin Lord, and Lil Boo, so on and so forth. I think it could be amazing, and it would work out really well if brought to life someday. If not that concept, something that features 2 different casts would be really solid. Maybe we see this in Enter the Blumhouse, maybe we don't, who knows. Going from San Francisco to Central Park, we know that by many people, this scare zone isn't someone's favorite unless there's pumpkins up in those trees. But I will say, I found myself enjoying a lot of the scare zones they've put in this location. Like as of recently, Jungle of Doom was great, and I'm super excited for Swamp of the Undead because they seem like 2 distinct different things that can be very done well. But this video is about scare zones that I would bring back, and a scare zone that I would bring back in a heartbeat would most definitely be Trick or Treat from HHN 2017. Not only because this is a scare zone based on my favorite movie, but it is also regarded as one of the best IP scare zones that Universal has ever put together. I can see a future in which this scare zone comes back to the T and people would still absolutely love and adore every little thing about it. Now, while Twisted Traditions was very similar to Trick or Treat in many aspects, it wasn't Trick or Treat. They tried very hard to make their own Trick or Treat, but it didn't work out. Now, if they were to bring this scare zone back and give us a little twist on it, maybe make it a Michael Dougherty zone by throwing in Krampus, that might be a banger. That might be something that I think could possibly be better than Trick or Treat by itself. Give me Clash of Holidays. And now finally we reached our final scare zone, and that is Hollywood. I have a deep love and care for this scare zone location, as usually this is where I sit down and scare zone watch most of the nights. And the fact that most of these scare zones are also fantastic as well kind of helps. Like, I can usually pick Chucky or I could pick Eddie's Revenge, but I decided to go with a scare zone that truly brought the most simple concept to life, and that was Graveyard Deadly Unrest from HHN 31. This was a scare zone that was simply just a haunted graveyard, but the way this scare zone was executed with the lighting, the fog, the plethora of different ghosts and ghouls, all of those things combined made this an instant classic. This is one of those scare zone concepts that I would not be upset at all whatsoever if they decided to just bring it back exactly how it was. And with that, that's the 5 scare zones that I would bring back for the 5 locations that we have right now. Now, not to say that I wouldn't bring back any other scare zones. For example, I would definitely bring back Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But the only issue there is that the location is a little finicky. But nonetheless, that was a fantastic scare zone and it would be amazing to bring back. And with all of that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below what scare zones you would want to bring back to the event. Subscribe if you guys already haven't done so. And stay excellent, my dudes.